Hello, 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 and welcome, welcome, welcome. We are at Loch Long, fellow wizards. I'm going to do a little Reiki and reading here. We have Hinds feet on high places. And as you can see, we are in some high places just now. We went on a plane. The last time you saw me, I was in the airport in Canada. Now we're here in Scotland at Loch Long. We've been writing songs in our beautiful little cabin, and the sun is just setting in the sky over the hills or mountains, the peaks. And a little sneak peek for you of where we are. So we were talking in our book in the first and second part about Much Afraid and how she's part of the family of fearlings. Hey, are we part of a family of fearlings? Most of us have certainly felt the fear. And I think a lot of our society and systems have been based on that fear. And the time is here to let go of the fear, climb to the high places, find the magical kingdom of love. And that's what it talks about, that we can't be afraid if we want to reach the high places. We actually have to let go of the fear and change ourselves. And so Much Afraid has been asked if she would be willing to change her name from Much Afraid, because she couldn't be much afraid and climb up to the high places in the kingdom of love. Now could she? So yes, she's talking to the shepherd, and she wants him to take her to the top of the mountain. And he's telling her, get prepared, because things are going to change if you go up there into the kingdom of love. You will have to leave fear behind. So yes, let's. She's just obtained the seed of love into her heart. She was afraid because it was going to be painful, but she was brave, and she said she would accept the seed of love into her heart. And so, yes, she says that she feels as though she'll never be afraid again. And the shepherd looked very kindly at the little shepherdess who had just received the seed of love into her heart, little Much Afraid, and was preparing to go with him to the high places, but also with full understanding. He knew her through and through, in all the intricate labyrinth of her lonely heart, far better than she knew herself. No one understood her better than he. That growing into the likeness of a new name is a long process, but he did not say this. He looked with a certain tender pity and compassion at the glowing cheeks and shining eyes, which had so suddenly transformed the appearance of plain little Much Afraid. Then he said, now you may go home and make your preparations for leaving. You are not to take anything with you, only leave everything in order. Do not tell anyone about it, for a journey to the high places needs to be a secret matter. I cannot now give you the exact time when we are to start for the mountains, but it will be soon, and you must be ready to follow me whenever I come to the cottage and call. I will give you a secret sign. I shall sing one of the shepherd's songs as I pass the cottage, and it will contain a special message for you. When you hear it, come at once and follow me to the trysting place. Then, as the sun had already gone down in a blaze of red and gold, yes, the eastern mountains were now veiled in misty mauve and gray, and the shadows were lengthening, so he turned and led his flock away towards the sheepfolds. Much Afraid turned her face homewards, her heart full of happiness and excitement, and still feeling as though she would never be frightened again. As she started back across the fields, she sang to herself one of the songs from an old book of songs which the shepherds often used. Never before had it seemed to her so sweet, so applicable. The Song of Songs is the loveliest song, the song of love the king. No joy on earth compares with his, but seems a broken thing. His name as ointment is poured forth, and all his lovers sing. Draw me, I will run after thee. Thou art my heart's one choice. Oh, bring me to thy royal house, to dwell there and rejoice. There in thy presence, O my King, to feast and hear thy voice. Look not upon me with contempt, though soiled and marred I be. The King found me an outcast thing, and set his love on me. I shall be perfected by love, made fair as the day to see. She walked singing across the first field and was halfway over the next, when suddenly she saw Craven Fear himself coming towards her. Poor little Much Afraid, for a little while had completely forgotten the existence of her dreadful relatives, and now here was the most dreaded and detested of them all, slouching towards her. Her heart filled with a terrible panic. She looked left and right, but there was no hiding place anywhere. And besides, it was all too obvious that he was actually coming to meet her, for as soon as he saw her, he quickened his pace, and in a moment or two, he was right beside her. See, fear will try to catch up with us and keep us where we are, keep us in that family of fear. And so she didn't think she was going to be afraid again, but there it is, with a horror that sickened her very heart. See, the fear was still there. She heard him say, "Well, here you are at last, little cousin Much Afraid. So we are to be married, eh? What do you think of that?" And he pinched her, presumably in a playful manner, but viciously enough to make her gasp and bite her lips to keep back a cry of pain. She shrank away from him and shook with terror and loathing. Unfortunately, this was the worst thing she could have done, for it was always her obvious fear which encouraged him to continue tormenting her. If only she could have ignored him, soon he would have tired of teasing her and her company, and would have wandered off to look for other prey. In all her life, however, Much Afraid had never been able to ignore fear. Now it was absolutely beyond her power to conceal the dread of which she felt. Her white face and terrified eyes immediately had the effect of stimulating Craven's desire to bait her. Here she was, alone and completely in his power. He caught hold of her, and poor Much Afraid uttered one frenzied cry of terror and pain. At that moment, Craven Fear loosed his grasp and cringed away. The shepherd had approached them unperceived and was standing beside them. One look at his stern face and flashing eyes, and the stout shepherd's cudgel grasped in his strong, uplifted hand was more than enough for the bully. Craven Fear slunk away like a whipped cur, actually running from the village away from the village, instead of towards it, not knowing where he was going, urged by one instinct and one instinct alone, to find a place of safety. Much Afraid burst into tears. Of course, she ought to have known that Craven was a coward, and if only she had lifted her voice and called for the shepherd, he would have fled at once. Now for the shepherd. Looking at her, noticing her dress was torn and disordered, and her arms had been bruised by the bully's grip, and yet that was the least part of her distress. She was overwhelmed with shame. Shame. That she had so quickly acted like her old name and nature, which she had hoped was beginning to be changed already. Or remember, she felt like she was never going to feel that fear again. And so we can feel ashamed when we feel the fear again, when we join that family of fear. But it's most important not to feel ashamed, you see, because it's little by little that we climb the mountain. It's little by little that we become willing to change. It seems so impossible to ignore the feelings, still less to resist them. She did not dare look at the shepherd, but had she done so, what she would have seen was the compassion he was regarding her with. She did not realize that the Prince of Love is of very tender compassions to them that are afraid. She supposed that, like everybody else, he was despising her for her silly fears, so she muttered a shamed "thank you." Then, Still without looking at him, she limped painfully toward the village, weeping bitterly as she went and saying over and over again to herself, "What is the use of even thinking of going to the high places? I could never reach them, for the least little thing is enough to turn me back." However, when at last she reached the security of the cottage, she began to feel better. And by the time she'd drunk a cup of tea and taken her evening meal, she had so far recovered that she was able to remind herself all that had happened there beside the cascade and pool. Suddenly she remembered with a thrill of wonder and delight that the seed of love had been planted in her heart. As she thought of it, the same almost intolerable sweetness stole over her, the bitter-sweet, indefinable but wholly delightful ecstasy of a new happiness. "It is happy to love," said Little Much Afraid to herself, and then she repeated, "It is happy to love." After putting the cottage in order for the night, because she was utterly tired out with all the conflicting emotions of that strange day, she went to bed. Lying there, before falling asleep, she sang over and over again to herself another of the lovely songs from the old songbook. "O thou whom my heart loveth, tell me where thou dost feed, and where thy flocks at noonday to rest and browse dost lead. For why should I by others be, and not by thee? O fairest among women, dost thou indeed not know? Then lead my little flocklet the way that my flocks go, and be to me as I to thee, sweet company." And then she fell into a heavy, dreamless sleep. We'll leave our little read right there for now, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now. Much mojo and magic.